Are you a fan of the NES classic Star Tropics? Well, check out my new book, The Test of Island Courage, a Star Tropics tribute. This book is a massive tribute to Star Tropics and Star Tropics 2 Zoda's Revenge. It has reviews, character bios, and the entire Star Tropics 1 and 2 story as told by Mike Jones. So if you're a fan of Star Tropics, make sure to get your copy of A Test of Island Courage, a Star Tropics tribute today. Link in the description below. Hey guys, Ryan here, broadcasting all the way from the popcorn rocket here in space for awesome video game memories, and we are here once again to talk about the NES and more of its awesome gaming library. Enjoy! Welcome to Awesome Video Game Memories, where we talk about awesome memories about video games. I'm Ryan, and guess what game we're talking about today? Come on, it's a bit difficult to guess. It's like totally not even on my shirt or anything, you know? It's Mario. Fuck it, it's Duck Hunt! Yeah, so my first exposure to Duck Hunt, like many kids of my age, was when I got to NES in 1988, and it came with the Super Mario Bros. / Duck Hunt Compilation cartridge, which has really risen in value in the past couple of years. I used to remember going to GameStop and seeing these for 99 cents. So Duck Hunt, the iconic game where you take out the trusty Nintendo zapper. Oh, don't worry, I have two zappers. I had to cut the cord on this one for, filming. Where you point your gun at the screen and blast away. Haha, yeah. Duck Hunt. Yeah, there was a time I tried to hunt ducks once. I remember that. Yeah. So I remember when I first played Duck Hunt, I was terrible at shooting these ducks. I thought I had to go all the way back and shoot them from afar, but I could not hit them until I decided to be an asshole and just point the gun this close at the screen and and that was the only way I could do it, man. But then once the difficulties started getting harder, I couldn't hit the ducks anymore. Like, the ducks would just fly off like that. And I also remember, you can actually control the ducks with the second controller, and I remember trying to have my cousin control the ducks to always stay down, but then by the time we got to the later levels, the ducks would just fly away super fast. Oh yeah, and I tried doing the two ducks at one time thing, and forget it, you have to be like... So in all honesty, the highest difficulty I was able to get to in Duck Hunt was probably level 22. Because after that time, the ducks just fly off the screen, like I said. And then there was clay shooting, which I liked, but I didn't like it as much as the original Duck Hunt. So in all honesty, I didn't play a lot into clay shooting. Maybe I got as far as level 5 or 10, I don't really remember. Oh yes, and everyone remembers all those special tricks that you can do with the light gun, which never really worked for me. Yeah, so everyone knows the light gun. When you fire it, there's like a white screen that appears on your TV, and that's where the gun hits. Now, a lot of people say that you can bring this up to a light bulb and shoot, but that never worked for me. And then there was that trick where you could raise the brightness on your TV to near maximum where it's all completely bright and shoot it. That never worked for me. The only thing that really worked for me is when I got the gun and put it up right next to the screen. That's the only thing that worked for me. And then when my parents changed TVs, it stopped working for me. So in all honesty, the only way I got past level 22 was using the Game Genie, where you can set this code where you can't lose, and then after level 99 it resets, so there's really no ending to Duck Hunt. And oh yeah, I've always wanted to shoot that fucking dog. Ugh, I can't shoot the dog! There was that one time I did, though. Duck Hunt on the NES. One of the most iconic games for its time. Like, you had a light gun. Like, how cool is that? Which I still have today. I mean, I have 2 light guns, but yeah, it's so cool that it came with a gun. Of course, trying to beat this game was like... Yeah, so you can get Duck Hunt on the Wii U Virtual Console, although they had to modify it for use for the Wiimote. They put cursors on the screen and it feels a lot different. And I know the original NES cartridge of Duck Hunt has actually gone up in value a little, but not too much. But don't expect to pay like $1 like I did back in the past. And it was also awesome that Duck Hunt did appear in Super Smash Bros. For the Wii U. And now I'm off to hunt some ducks, just like the way I did before. Welcome to Awesome Video Game Memories, where we talk about awesome memories about video games. I'm Ryan, and the game we're going to talk about today is Kid Icarus. So I have to admit, Kid Icarus isn't exactly one of my all-time favorite games for the NES. I do like the game a lot, and it's a game I've played a lot of, but I don't consider it one of my favorite games for the NES. Because I think the game has a bit of balance issues considering the challenge. Like, most of the stages where you just go up or go to the right are pretty simple. Although I think when you hit the fortresses at the end of the first 3 levels, that's where the difficulty really spikes up. And not because of the layout of the labyrinth or the enemies, it's mostly because of these enemies, the fucking eggplant wizards. You know, Eggplant Wizard from Captain and the Game Master. Yeah, I hated these guys. Like, I remember in the second dungeon, like, the eggplant wizards would hit me right before I would get to the boss, so I had to trek all the way to find a guy to cure me, and then I would have to go back, and I would have to try to avoid the eggplant wizard again, and then I get hit again. Fuck those eggplant wizards, I hate these guys. Although I wasn't exactly too fond of the Grim Reaper either. Ah, get away from me! So I remember there was one item in this game that I always wanted to get, but I've never gotten it. I've seen it on YouTube. It was the credit card. I wanted to get the credit card in this game. Yes, there was a credit card listed in the instruction manual. I remember spending hours upon hours, like, just killing enemies, trying to go into a room where I can get the credit card. And I remember my hearts went up to like 9999. I wanted that credit card so bad. But now, being an actual adult, I really don't want another credit card because I'm in debt. Yeah. Bankruptcy! But at least for all your troubles that you go through from the first 3 levels, the last level is very, very easy to beat, and Medusa at the end is definitely not that hard. And of course you can get a different ending depending on how many items you got. I remember getting the ending where Pit has the baseball cap, my cousin got the ending where he grows into a full-grown man. But of course you can just use passwords and try to get the other endings that way. Yeah, the password I remember the most is Icarus fights Medusa Angels. Which actually put me in the second labyrinth, which is my least favorite one. I didn't like the third labyrinth. The first one isn't too bad. Because I think the second and the third one have the worst placement of the fucking eggplant wizards. Although it was pretty cool, like, if you got enough hammers during the stages, like after getting the harp and the enemies turn to hammers, you get to free some of the soldiers and they try to help you kill the bosses, but they die like so fast. Like, I remember fighting the bosses at the end of each stage. I would have maybe like 10 or 15 of these guys, and then they would just like die just like that. I gotta do everything by myself in this game. So even though I don't really consider Kid Icarus one of my favorite games on the system, it's still a pretty good game and I definitely recommend checking out. You can get it on the Virtual Console for the Wii U and the 3DS, and you can play it on the NES Mini. And also make sure to check out the sequel on the Game Boy and the 3DS reboot. And of course, Pit is playable in Smash Bros. Welcome to Awesome Video Game Memories, where we talk about awesome memories about video games. I'm Ryan, and the game we're talking about today is Base Wars for the NES. Yes, Base Wars, made by Ultra Games, which was actually really Konami trying to get around Nintendo's draconian policies on how many games they can release in a year. So I remember seeing this game in magazines, and I was like, robots and baseball! How could you go wrong? And you can't, because Base Wars is awesome! So I love how they explain the story of this game in the manual. Like, they didn't want to pay outrageous salaries to baseball players, so they had robots go out in the field instead, so they don't have to pay baseball players anymore. Yeah, I remember that time they tried to test that out and I was a volunteer. It didn't really go that well. So, at its core gameplay, Base Wars was the same as almost any NES baseball game, because you play baseball, obviously, but they added a lot in this game because you're robots this time. You know, robots that you don't have to pay that much in comparison to real-life baseball players. You know, Jose Canseco, you replace with a robot. And one of the things I really like about this game is the music. I mean, the music is really, really awesome, like late 80s tough guy Konami music. It really gets you into the groove of the game. And now let's talk about the game's biggest selling point, and the reason why I wanted to play the game was the fights. The fights happen when you try to go on a base, but the catcher already has the ball, so you have to fight your way to get that base, man. And yeah, the battles can get pretty tough unless you have a laser gun or a laser sword. And it's really, really funny when you actually beat your opponent, or your opponent beats you, that your opponent can still beat the crap out of you even though you're dead. Yeah, I remember how painful that was for me. Yeah, so I definitely recommend trying to get your players outfitted with a laser gun or a laser sword, although it gets really, really expensive. And it's so cool how they make this really big deal out of the home runs. Like, it goes up and then you see a satellite from space. Yeah, and you actually get different type of robots to play with. Like, you get the regular robots, you get the tank robots, and then you get the flying robots, and then you get the wheel robots. And the wheel robots were my favorite, especially during the fights. Like, they just twirl around and just like spin and hit you with the wheel. I thought that was hilarious. Although, just like most sports games back on the NES, there wasn't any endings. Like, you just like play the game and that's kind of it. Like, the core game is just, you know, playing baseball and fighting. And like, you can play a pennant mode, but then there's no ending after you beat it. Which just kind of sucks because, you know, Tecmo Super Bowl had an ending. Although it is really cool, like when you're pitching, like the robot like charges his arm like Mega Man's Mega Buster and fires the ball. Dude, like I said, Mega Man baseball, they gotta make it happen. While Base Wars was definitely a really good game, sadly it didn't turn into a franchise for Konami. I mean, I would have really liked to see Super Base Wars, Base Wars 2, Base Wars on the PlayStation, Base Wars 2017 million, Base Wars Extreme! And actually, what is really weird, even though it was developed by Konami in Japan, it never got a Famicom release, or any foreign release really. Yeah, so Base Wars for the NES. If Konami decides to be a decent gaming company again, they could hopefully reboot this game, because I don't think anyone really wants it, but I do! I want more Base Wars! And sadly, if you want this game, it's not available on any of the virtual consoles, but you can get a copy on eBay. It's not super expensive. Yeah, so that ends this episode of Awesome Video Game Memories about Base Wars.
The human race had done it, the robots have won it, salaries of players was too high. Corporations had to compromise, replacing all the players with the robot guys. We're talking Base Wars, from here to San Diego, talking Base Wars. It hits like a tornado, robots use rockets to pitch the ball. Stealing first base is a brawl. We're talking cyborgs, laser swords and all. We're talking Base Wars, from here to San Diego, talking Base Wars. It hits like a tornado, robots use rockets to pitch the ball. Stealing first base is a brawl. We're talking cyborgs, laser swords and all.
Welcome to Awesome Video Game Memories, where we talk about awesome memories about video games. I'm Ryan, and the game we're going to talk about today is Kungfu! Wah! So I remember, even before I got my NES, I was over at my cousin's house, and he borrowed over 40 games from his friend, and that's how I got to play a lot of the NES games before I even bought them, and one of those games was Kungfu! Wah! So I remember playing that and thinking, wow, this is so cool! I'm like the Karate Kid, man! Although there was a Karate Kid game totally based on this, and it was terrible. Go watch the Angry Video Game Nerd video on that. So I remember getting as far as the 3rd level where you have to fight the big black boss, and then he just kicked my ass. I didn't really know how to beat him. So I confess I didn't really revisit this game until like the year 2000 when I started downloading games on emulators, and I revisited the game with save states, and then I was able to beat it from there. Then around 2006, I actually found a complete-in-the-box version of Kungfu at a Mod Podge game shop that I bought for $10, and you know what? I kept playing it, and it was awesome. Yeah, so Kungfu isn't exactly a super difficult game once you get the patterns down. I mean, the entire game is incredibly patterned, and once you know what to do, it's very, very easy to beat the game multiple times. I mean, I would actually beat the game like 5 times in a row before I got sick of it. So I remember the reason why I had a lot of difficulty with this game was because I kept trying to rely on the kick, because the kick had a lot more range to it. I was like, what's the point of using the punch? Well, I figured out the hard way. A lot of bosses, especially the 3rd level boss, which is the big black guy, and the 4th level boss, which is, Igor, the gremlin guy, they fall faster with the punches. And also, by the time you hit the 2nd level, there's a lot more obstacles, which definitely makes it a lot harder. I remember as a kid having a lot of difficulty with those. Yeah, I especially remember the most difficult for me was the 4th stage when I first got to it. I mean, there's like shit just flying everywhere. There's like bugs coming out of the walls, and then there's dragons like shooting fire at you. And yeah, this game is not really an easy game to just rush through it. You have to know the patterns, and you have to know when to duck, you have to know when to jump, especially when the snakes fall down on the floor. Oh yeah, then let's not forget those little midgets that fucking jump over you, like you're trying to kick them and they just pop on your head. I'm like, shit, man. Yeah, so I remember when I got to the end and fought Mr. X, I actually lost the first time because I tried to beat him with punches, but there's an easy method. You can just beat him like you do with most enemies, just low kick him till he dies, even though he blocks most of your moves. So yeah, Kungfu for the NES, it was one of the first NES games. It actually wasn't made by Nintendo, it was made by Irem, who made, Kickle Cubicle, and the game was originally called Spartan X in Japan, and there is a Spartan X sequel, which we usually call Kungfu 2, where you're actually, fighting on trains and military stuff. It's actually pretty cool, you should try it out. So unfortunately, Kungfu was never released on the Nintendo Wii Virtual Console or the 3DS Virtual Console, mostly because the game was made by Irem, and I have no idea what happened to Irem. And even though classic gaming is still pretty expensive, it's not too expensive to get Kungfu on the NES. Welcome to Awesome Video Game Memories, where we talk about awesome memories about video games. I'm Ryan, and the game we're talking about today is Tecmo Super Bowl! So I've been a fan of football ever since my parents took me to a football game at the Los Angeles Sports Memorial Coliseum, where it was the Raiders versus the Dolphins, and the Dolphins beat them 24-0, so this is why I am wearing a shirt of my favorite team, the Miami Dolphins. Yes, you can get the shirt at TecmoBowlers.com. Although, honestly, I haven't really followed football for the past couple of years, but I do watch the Super Bowl every year. So my football knowledge only really goes back to when, Dan Marino was still quarterback for the Miami Dolphins. So I remember back at my cousin's, he and his friend were playing the original Tecmo Bowl, which definitely looked pretty cool, but I didn't really know anything about football or its rules back in the day. So even though I loved football, I didn't really know the rules. I didn't know what first to fourth down was and shit. So I was that kid who punted the ball on second down. I also tried to go for field goals when I was 90 yards away. And I would be excited when, oh hey, I'm on second down. There's more. And Tecmo Super Bowl was the game that actually taught me the rules of football. And it even got me interested in playing football when I was a kid. And I was terrible at it. But still, Tecmo Super Bowl was awesome! So Tecmo Super Bowl is based on the 1990-91 season when the Giants won the Super Bowl that year. Yeah, I remember because a lot of my friends were talking about it, but I didn't really know the teams. I just cared about the Dolphins and Dan Marino. How come the Dolphins didn't make the Super Bowl? I would have liked them to face the Giants. So what really made me a fan of this game was in 1992, After my friend brought over Tecmo Super Bowl, I decided, you know what, I like this game enough that I'm gonna rent it from my mom and pop video rental, rather than renting, Mega Man or Mario, and give this game a shot. I would always choose the Miami Dolphins, but I wasn't really good enough at the game because I didn't really understand it. I couldn't even score a single touchdown. But the light bulb in my head finally went off when I realized, 1 through 4th down is how many chances you get within a 10-yard range to get another first down so you can get closer. And that's what actually made me good at the game. Understanding the whole concept of downs. So now I realize the difference between run and pass plays. I started realizing that you can use a field goal when you're less than 50 yards away from the end zone, and you have to punt when you're on the other side of the field so the other team won't have a lot of yardage. And then after that, I felt like I was really playing football. So the first thing about this game that you notice is the music. The music of Tecmo Super Bowl is fucking incredible. It's like Ninja Gaiden quality music, but in football. Like the title screen. Yeah, I especially love the music during the preseason games. It just sounds like it's like you're, watching a game during the summer. Yeah, and I definitely love how dark the music goes during the playoffs and the Super Bowl. And I also love the tune that plays after a game is over and they show all the stats. It really sounds like kind of motivational. And the best music of them all was definitely the music that plays after you win the Super Bowl. I mean, that music really made you feel that you accomplished like everything. So once I started learning how to use the playbook in this game, my favorite plays were mostly, I like the play action for the pass, I like the shotgun, and my favorite pass play is usually the flea flicker. If you were able to successfully pull off a flea flicker, like you had the game in the bag. Now, Tecmo Super Bowl is a lot different than a lot of the Madden games. Like the Madden games have offensive plays and defensive plays. Tecmo Super Bowl mostly has offensive plays, and your defense is usually trying to guess which offensive play the other team uses. It's kind of funny. I would play with my friend and we would tell each other which play we chose. I was like, pass 1. Oh, fuck, I chose run 4. But the problem is with the flea flicker, if the defense guessed it right, you were fucked. You would fumble that fucking ball and they would get it. So you had to be really careful about the flea flicker. So for the running plays, I liked having a play that went up, I liked having a play that went down, but my favorite one was the RNS quarterback sneak. Like most of the time I can pull it off and get a decent amount of yardage, but the problem was the quarterback was usually one of the slower players. Like they usually make the faster players, the wide receivers, the tight ends, and the running backs. Yeah, and I confess, I'm mostly a pass guy, so if you play against me in Tecmo Super Bowl, I'm gonna go for passes like 95% of the time. And if you guess my flea flicker, Yeah, so when it comes to the mechanics of this game, I admit I am a complete expert at the offensive mechanics, but not so much the defensive mechanics. Yeah, so when it comes to the offensive mechanics, like the run plays don't really get you a lot of yardage, but the pass plays, if you were able to get a pass successfully completed, you can run up and down kind of in a jigsaw type of way, and you can easily avoid most of the defense, but they actually do make the defense a lot faster than you if you're not that lucky. So usually when it comes to the defense in this game, I usually pick one of the linebackers and I try to look for an opening to sack the quarterback because I really sucked at using the cornerbacks and the safeties because it's very hard to intercept passes in this game, although the computer has no problems doing it when you try to pass. And also what was really awesome about this game, in Tecmo fashion, were the cutscenes. Just like in Ninja Gaiden, but you get football cutscenes. Like I love the cutscenes where you score a touchdown. Oh, and when you get sacked, it's fucking brutal. And then those epic cutscenes where you throw the ball and you're just hoping your wide receiver catches it, and he does! Although there are a lot of times where it bounces right out of his hands. And they really make the injury cutscenes so intense, like... And it is pretty funny when one of the teams wins the championship game, they're all cheering, and then in the bottom right corner you see that player just hanging his head in shame. Oh yeah, and then there's the cutscenes with the cheerleaders. So I remember the back of the box really emphasized on so much real football that you get to play seasons in this game, like the full 16 game season. And the good thing is you can actually skip most of it, although it takes a very long time. Well, see, back in my day when we played Tecmo Super Bowl and we tried to get past the seasons, we had to watch the scoreboards go all the way, man, all the way until we hit the playoffs, son. And also with the playoffs, this game uses a random generator to determine who wins if you don't decide to play as any of the teams, so if you don't like the results of one, you can just reset it. Then, the big game itself, the Super Bowl! So the coolest thing about the Super Bowl is the mighty Bob Jack halftime show. Yeah, so what was funny about this game is the worst teams in this game were the Indianapolis Colts and the New England Patriots, and the best teams in this game were definitely the New York Giants and the San Francisco 49ers. Although, look at the Patriots now. Yeah, it's kind of crazy to believe that Tecmo Super Bowl took place during 1990 to 91, and the last Tecmo Super Bowl player retired in 2010. So pretty much if you play this game, absolutely none of the players in there are playing football anymore, which is kind of sad. Yeah, so Tecmo Super Bowl for the NES. It actually did spawn a couple of sequels on the Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo, which I personally did not find as good as the NES version for some reason. So even though Tecmo doesn't make football games anymore, the legacy of this game is still preserved by a lot of dedicated fans out there at tecmobowl.org and tecmobowlers.org, where I got this t-shirt. Because at tecmobowl.org you can actually download updated Tecmo Super Bowl ROMs which update all the players, they add all the new teams, and also you can join a Tecmo Bowl League. Now isn't that pretty fucking cool? Yeah, so Tecmo Super Bowl for the original NES is still my personal favorite football game of all time, and you can get this game on eBay. It's not super expensive, but it's kind of getting up there. I definitely recommend getting a reproduction cartridge with the updated players, and you can definitely get the ROM online. Welcome to Awesome Video Game Memories, where we talk about awesome memories about video games. I'm Ryan, and the game we're going to talk about today is Bobble! So Bobble on the NES, a port of the arcade game made by Taito, which is now owned by Square Enix. So we're going to get a Bobble and Final Fantasy crossover soon, right? Follows the story of two dinosaurs, Bub and Bob, trying to rescue their girlfriends, and since they can't really think of any other way to rescue their girlfriends, they drink a lot of soap and rescue them that way. Wash those dirty mouths. So unfortunately as a kid, I did not see the arcade version in arcades, which was a shame because I would have loved to play this. But what drew me to this game was Bub and Bob are dinosaurs. And every kid goes through that phase where dinosaurs are awesome, and dinosaurs are still awesome. Like, dude, I was just kind of thinking about it. Like, modern day Bobble remake. But have the dinosaurs look like how they do in Jurassic Park, and then they shoot bubbles and they kill Nazis. Bobble revival! Oh, Square Enix, pay me money. So, Bobble is a game for 1 or 2 players where you control Bub and Bob and you go down into the land of something, but it looks like candy, and then you have to trap enemies in bubbles by blowing bubbles out of your mouth. And this is where I expect the nostalgia critic to go, fucking bubbles.
Fucking bubbles.
Thanks, critic. So in order to beat your enemies in this game, you have to trap them inside bubbles, hop on top of them, and blow them out of the bubbles as they fall into the ground and turn into healthy fruit. Amazing! So not only does drinking soap give you the ability to trap and kill enemies, it also makes them healthy snacks! Well, which is a good contrast because a lot of the power-ups are candy itself. So you get various candies as power-ups in this game, like you get candies that help you shoot bubbles faster, you have candies that help you shoot bubbles farther, and also throughout the game you get these really awesome blue bubbles that help you speed through levels and speed through enemies like whee! And throughout the levels you get to collect letters that spell out to extend, which help you skip a few levels, which is really useful because a lot of the levels in this game start getting really hard, like really hard. And of course you have your standard enemies that just run over the place, and then you start having enemies that start shooting stuff at you. And my least favorite enemies of them all are these like alien enemies that shoot lasers from you all the way from the top. Like there's this one level that's really hard. Like you have to hop on your bubbles to get to the top to kill the enemies, but the enemies on top are the freaking laser aliens that keep blasting down at you, kind of like Space Invaders in a way. Well, another game made by Taito. And also, if you spend way too long trying to kill enemies, the evil Baron von Blubber tries to kill you and you cannot trap him in any bubbles. Like, this motherfucker's gonna eat you alive. Looks like you can't use soap to wash his dirty mouth. And of course, as the game progresses, the levels get harder and harder and harder and harder and harder and harder. But in order to advance past level 99, you have to get the crystal ball, and the crystal ball is not easy to get. Like you have to like hop across this one level in hopes of getting that crystal ball before the enemies kill you or you run out of time before Baron von Blubber tries to kill you. But once you get that crystal ball, you get to access the next couple levels before you fight the final boss. And holy crap, man, this final boss is hard. Hard as shit. Like, you need to wash that motherfucker's mouth with lightning bubbles, bitch. So in order to beat the final boss and rescue your girlfriends, you have to get the lightning bubbles on the top, and then you have to make the bubbles on the walls, and then hop on them to get the lightning to strike him, and that's how you damage him. And this ain't easy, man, because like this guy is like a fucking drunk, and he like tries to fire all his beer bottles at you. He's like, I have your girlfriends, but I'm gonna throw my beer bottles at you, you fucking dinosaurs. You should have gone extinct like millions of years ago. And so once you beat him, and then the ending.
Oh my god. Ah, it's so painful to watch the bad ending. Oh my god.
Yeah, I remember working so hard to beat this final boss. And getting that bad ending was like a slap in the face to me. Like, holy shit, man. But in order to get the good ending, you have to beat the game with 2 players. Wait, this is 4. 2 players, yes. But wait, what if I don't have a second controller? Well, before you beat the boss, you just press start, press select, your buddy comes up, and then that's it. But you have to make sure you have 1 extra life to beat the game, which is really hard. And let's not forget, if you're too late in popping the bubble for the last boss, he comes back pissed. Like he's like fucking like drunken kung fu shit, like throwing bottles at you, and he's like freaking red with rage, man. He's like drunk and fighting you and shit. But hey, it's not over. Even after you beat the 100 plus levels, you get to play Super Bubble Bobble, where it's 100 times harder. And yes, I've beaten both modes back to back. And then you get the true ending, which is not too much different from the regular ending, but it's definitely an ending. So yeah, Bubble Bobble for the NES. Now it's a shame I did not play this game in the arcades, because I would have had a blast playing this, but me and my cousin used to play this game all the time, like all the time. We even beat regular Bubble Bobble and Super Bubble Bobble back to back. I think that took like 3 or 4 hours, but it was amazing. And the great thing is, this game has a password feature, so you don't have to start all the way from the beginning. Like, imagine getting to level 99, and then your mom tells you, like, you have to go to sleep because you have school tomorrow. And you're like, no, I made it all the way to level 99. But hey, passwords. EECJJ is the one I remember the most. So unfortunately, you cannot get Bubble Bobble on any of the virtual consoles. It's not too expensive on eBay for the NES, but you probably don't want to invest in its sequel. That is really expensive. Because, Square Enix owns Taito's IPs and Bubble Bobble, Square Enix, I want to see a re-release of Bubble Bobble, and my remake, give me a little money and I'll help you out there, Square Enix. Or how about Dissidia, Bubble Bobble. Have Bubble Bobble and the Final Fantasy characters, and then you have Bub and Bob. They're able to shoot bubbles at like Lightning and Vivi and Cloud, and that would be awesome, wouldn't it? Yeah. Or better yet, Bubble Bobble live action Hollywood remake using the animatronics from Jurassic Park, and then have that T-Rex shoot bubbles.
Holy shit, that kid has bubbles!
Thanks, Nostalgia Critic. Call me Spielberg. Welcome to Awesome Video Game Memories, where we talk about awesome memories about video games. I'm Ryan, and the game we're going to talk about today is Excitebike. So Excitebike, one of the staple releases for the NES, very fun to play, very simple to play, although it's not very in-depth. So my first memories of Excitebike were when I was at my cousin's house and he had a stack of 40 games, and Excitebike was one of the games we played because I made him play all 40 of those games because I didn't have an NES at the time and I really wanted one. This was like back in '88, so I was like, I want to play all those games. Oh, this bike game looks pretty cool. Yeah, Excitebike! And then eventually when I got the NES, I ended up getting my own copy where I played it a lot, and what I remember most about this game was I was trying to beat the other racers, although you actually can't. It was weird. I was like, yeah, I'm in first place, but wait, how did the guy just get ahead of me? I beat them back there! Until I realized you're trying to beat the time, and the racers are just obstacles. Yeah, one of the things I actually really disliked about this game was you couldn't race against the other racers. They were just more of obstacles, so they would block you for time, but it would have been better if Excitebike had a mode where you can race against other racers and come in first place, because I remember beating all the racers, then I come in third place? I mean, what the hell? But the real meat of this game was making your own courses. It was like a Mario Maker in the 80s, but more like Excitebike Maker. Yeah, me and my cousin, we would lend each other the game, create a course because you can only save one course per cartridge, and then try to get past that course. And I used to make all these crazy courses where you would have the ramp, and then the ramp would make you fall down on the hill, and then you'd have those really big, ramp thingies. And then I would be an asshole and put a lot of mud. Although in all honesty, I was okay at making my own courses in this game. I think my cousin made a lot better courses than me. Because I would make courses that would just make me an asshole. I would just try to put as much mud as possible. I would try to put more obstacles. Although he would make the really good ones with, the ramps and then the hills. And he would put a small hill, big hill, maybe two big hills, then a small hill, then a ramp to help you jump over those hills. I would just put a ramp that makes you fall in the mud. Even though this wasn't a really, really complicated or deep game, one of my favorite things to do with this game was use the Game Genie with it. Well, yeah, there's this code that would give you infinite turbo, but the code I used the most was just pressing the A button, the regular acceleration button, made you go super fast, so when you hopped off a ramp or a hill, you would jump at the top of the screen. It was pretty crazy. And also one of my favorite things to do was get in front of the bikers and make them trip, all the times they made me trip. Yeah, I'd probably break several bones if this was Excitebike in real life. Yeah, I wish I had a lot more to say about this game, but the game is just so simple, it's fun, but it's not very in-depth. It's a game that you'll probably have fun for about half an hour, then you'll probably move on to something else. It's not really a game you would play for hours on end. But I still regard it as one of the NES classics, and I highly recommend it. And of course, you can also check out the Nintendo 64 remake of this game, which I haven't played yet. Of course, you can get this game on the Virtual Console, you can get the 3D version on the 3DS, and this game is playable on the NES Mini. Welcome to Awesome Video Game Memories, where we talk about awesome memories about video game memorabilia. And want to know what's awesome today? Is the Ultimate Nintendo Guide to the NES Library by Pat Contri. So I've been a huge fan of Pat Contri, aka Pat the NES Punk, especially his completely unnecessary podcast he does with Ian Ferguson, aka the CU Podcast, and his Not So Common podcast. Definitely check those out on iTunes. So man, the Ultimate Nintendo Guide to the NES Library is over 400 pages of awesome retro NES video game goodness. Let's check the book out. Alright guys, let's take a look at the book itself. Like I said before, it is 400 pages of awesome NES goodness. Now we have here is like all those classic advertisements you saw in the magazines, like in the front and in the back. And also we got an awesome foreword and dedication by Blake Harris, the author of the Console Wars. And not only do we have a lot of written content by Pat Contri himself, we also have Ian Ferguson from the CU Podcast and a whole bunch of guests who you might recognize. Alright, so let's get down to the main content of the book. Yes, this book covers every single game in the NES library, mostly the US. So on each page you get the title of the game, the genre, the cartridge the game came on, whether it's the US version or an unlicensed cartridge, and also you get a lot of cool tidbits like the release date, the developer, the publisher, the number of players, special features, whether it's licensed or unlicensed, the availability, and personal ratings by each of the writers. And not only do you get games, you also get a lot of the accessories like the NES Advantage, the Power Glove, and the Game Genie. And not only do we get licensed and unlicensed games, we have a lot of PAL exclusives, which are only exclusive in Europe, along with a lot of special and promo cartridges, especially the Nintendo World Championship cartridges, which Pat owns, and also a lot of rare test cartridges like Duck Hunt, the Joystick Test, the Control Deck Test, the NTF2 Test, and the Power Pad Test, along with the Port Test. Because you can never forget the port test. And also there's an awesome section about the North American cart variants. And not only is there a physical version of this book, there is also a digital version which you can read on your iPhone. I am reading it on Kindle right now. And also there is a companion app for your smartphone, which is not quite the book in app form, but it does have the whole database of games in the book. And also you can keep track of your collection and also find links on Amazon and eBay and also see the cart estimated value, the complete in box value, and the new estimated value. So I completely, 100% wholeheartedly recommend this book to any NES collector or anyone who grew up with the NES just like me, like, you know, us 80s and 90s kids. And if you're interested in getting the physical or the digital copy of this book, or even both, you can get them both at Pat's website at thepunkeffect.com. And if you're interested in getting the Ultimate NES app for your smartphone, you can get it from iTunes or the Android store. And that wraps up this episode of Awesome Video Game Memories about the Ultimate Guide to the NES Library. Hey everybody, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, especially subscribe, and make sure to click on that notification bell so you know when we release new videos, because YouTube's probably not going to tell you. And if you want to see me play games live, make sure to follow me at twitch.tv/BattleGeekPlus. And if you have a Twitch Prime account, make sure to subscribe so you can get awesome perks like subscriber badges and much more. And if you want to support us, make sure to support us on patreon.com/Ryan Molina, because every dollar helps me bring you a better show. And also make sure to follow me on Twitter at @ThatRyanMolina and at BattleGeekPlus. And also make sure to check out the official Battle Geek Plus website for a complete listing of our books, merchandise, t-shirts, and a lot more. Alright, thanks for watching this video, and if you enjoyed this video, make sure to check out these other videos right here. Thanks and take care.